Greetings. This is Dr. Roché Youngworth with Fayette County Public Schools, and this session is Articulation as Key for K-12 Immersion Programs. We have two goals for this session. First, can you identify existing key structures that support your program articulation? And can you identify needed key structures to further program articulation? So a little bit about our programs that we have. Our programs are all Spanish and English dual language immersion programs. At the elementary level, we have 1,240 students in our elementary programs, which include 4 different elementary schools. One school is school-wide, and that program, every student there is studying Spanish and English through the immersion program. 3 of our elementary schools are strands, so roughly half of the students at that school choose at kindergarten level to enter into the immersion program. Out of those 3 strands, one in particular is a Heritage Speakers program. So all students in it speak Spanish as a heritage language, which makes it a little bit unique for our district. Our elementary school programs are all 50-50. 3 of them, the programs are your traditional 50-50, half of the day the students are in English and half the day the students are in Spanish. One of our programs, the one that has the Heritage Speakers, they do a rotation where students might have Spanish for 2 days straight, so 2 A days, and then they do English all day for 2 days. And they cycle through the school year that way. So it's a 50-50 technically if one looks at the school calendar, but in a school day, I guess it would be 100-100 for Spanish, then 100-100 English, and they'd rotate back and forth. For all of our elementary programs, math and science are content areas studied in Spanish language. Our 4 elementary programs flow into the middle school. We have one middle school that houses all 4 elementary school students. That program is growing quite a bit. Currently, we have 336 students in the immersion program. We anticipate next year hitting half that school will be immersion students. The program at the middle school for 6th grade is a 60-40. Thus, 4 of the 7 classes the students take are in the Spanish language. When they go to 7th and 8th grade, math is dropped, and the 3 other content areas are continued, and that includes social studies, science, and Spanish language arts. So we call it a 40-60 for 7th and 8th grade. That middle school is located on the same campus as our one high school. So this is a K-12 program. The one high school, again, is a strand. We have 161 students in the high school program. For 9th and 10th grade, it's roughly 30% of their day is spent in Spanish, 70% in English, and the students take Spanish language arts and science at the 9th and 10th grade levels. Then at the 11th and 12th grade levels, the 2 AP courses come in, AP Lang and AP Lit, along with a film and culture studies class. 4 out of 6 of our programs are ISA certified, thus International Spanish Academies, and we're very proud of that and have a good relationship with the Spanish Embassy and make good use of their visiting teacher program. 2 out of 6 of our programs have earned over the years School of the Year. That's our high school program and one of our elementaries, Maxwell Elementary. So that was a huge accomplishment for us. Our students graduating, we usually have 100% that earn the seal of biliteracy and demonstrate language skills at that level. So for us, articulation is key. We always look at our programs as a K-12 initiative. We talk to our parents that way. We talk to our students that way. We make programmatic decisions that way, curriculum, and so on. So we feel like that's very important. The approach you take is to have that K-12 vision. We also embrace the 3 pillars. We've adjusted them slightly to meet our district needs and our state needs. So our 3 pillars of our immersion education, our immersion programs are our students will be biliterate. So the biliteracy in both Spanish and English. that our students will learn and their core content, thus have academic achievement for grade level, and that our students will be global citizens, thus they achieve global competence through this program. So something that we've created to help leaders and educators understand the supports we have for our program, and each year we keep building more and more, and we're super excited about that. We have this visual with our 3 pillars. If you notice on the biliteracy pillar, the green one, we do have some developed materials or bought materials that support teachers with that content that's happening. So one of our immersion facilitators, Deborah Aparicio, has done a wonderful job creating the K-2 math supports that go along with investigations that the teachers use in Spanish with the students. Additionally, we have bought McGraw-Hill Maravillas for support in literacy. Also under biliteracy, we do stamp or Apple test our students from 3rd grade on most years. We skip the 9th grade and 11th grade years, but otherwise they get tested 3 through 12. We have rubrics that I'll be sharing with you. Something we call Language Continuum that is fresh off the press, and I will share that with you as well. Under the academic achievement pillar, we do have content that is in Spanish. Amplify is our science, so all schools have that available to them to use. Maravillas, of course, is McGraw-Hill for the language arts. Envision and Investigations are also in Spanish, and that is our math series. Some other support for academic achievement, K-Prep is our state testing. That is done in English, but it does show us if our students are learning what they learned in Spanish. We have MAP, and we have our Kentucky Academic Standards. So those are all things that are there as data or tools for us to determine and guide our students' learning. Global competence, we use the intercultural communication standards produced by Necessful Actful to guide what we do with our students and the learning experience they'll have. Supporting all those pillars, all 3, we have 2 things, and we call them the proficiency portfolios and the instructional expectations. And I'll be looking at those with you as well. So we're going to focus on the DLI instructional expectations that we use to articulate our K-12 program, the proficiency portfolios that are used K-12, and the new language continuum that is K-12. So let's take a second and have you reflect. What existing structures are in place for supporting program articulation for your schools or your programs? Feel free to pause this video, reflect, and join me back. So the first tool that I wanted to share is what we call instructional expectations. They are program assurances. However, what makes our program assurances a little different is when I looked at many district and state program assurances, there were things listed that were out of the control of a teacher in the classroom. It had to do more with leadership and decisions made at that level, and not what a teacher's doing in our room. So we have a different document that articulates program assurances. This document are the instructional expectations. So we have 6 articulated assurances of how we do instruction in Fayette County from K through 12. It doesn't matter what grade level you are in the immersion program. These 6 categories articulate what a teacher does to help a student learn. So we've got input, and we have 2 sub-bullets under there. Some teachers like to call this the thou shouts or the non-negotiables. So it's non-negotiable. Our teachers will stay 100% in the target language. They will use input +1 with strategies to support student understanding. And we provide a text-rich environment for our students. The second expectation focuses on student output. So we believe output is necessary for language acquisition, and we expect our students to use 100% target language when they produce language, whether it be interpersonal or presentational, writing, or speaking. We expect all assignments to be in the target language. A third assurance that we have for an instructional expectation are outcomes. We have 2 outcomes we ask of the teachers. So we hope for an I can statement that aligns to the core content that the teacher might be teaching, and an I can statement that aligns to the language specifically that they're targeting, the Spanish language they're targeting with the students. There are some schools that weave the 2 together, and that's fine, as long as both are being reflected upon and being intentional. The next instructional expectation are all modes are included. So all 5 modes need to be used pretty equally, but we know there's a heavy emphasis on input for the students to acquire language. And students need opportunities to demonstrate their learning in multiple modes. The 5th instructional expectation refers to the academic content, and we expect teachers to stay on grade level for their academic content, but we acknowledge they're going to have to adjust that content to the language proficiency goals. We also encourage our teachers to use as much authentic resources in their instruction to enhance students' understanding of others and interculturality. The final instructional expectation are the strategic separation of the language. So we strongly encourage translation to be avoided. It's not a go-to strategy. It's a last resort. What we do ask the teachers is for them to use strategies such as visuals, gestures, modeling, context, putting the language in context, and frequent comprehension checks to ensure students understand. We have developed a walkthrough tool that are all the components of the walkthrough tool. It's a Google tool that we use, are directly aligned to each of these bullets. So when we talk with our teachers, talk with our leaders, we're using the language on this document. Again, that is K through 12. The next support we have to help that articulation is the monitoring that's in place. So this is something we've established, and this year we'll go full force into it. We've kind of staggered this in, so we're excited to see the results of this continuous monitoring of our students. The monitoring has 3 components. It has language rubrics that we have developed. There's a portfolio system, and the usage of Stamp and/or Apple. So the first is our language rubrics. So we created these. Multiple teachers were involved, leaders we have that have been trained on OPI, 4-day training. They understand language proficiency very deeply. We call them proficiency leads. And they're the ones that turn around and provide training for the teachers at their school. So we're trying to build capacity. The proficiency leads were involved with creating these rubrics, and we have 2 different versions. We have a single point rubric that you're seeing, and on the top of it, a teacher would indicate the mode or modes that the student is going to be using or engaging for communication. So maybe it's interpersonal, so you would circle the IC, and maybe there's some interpretive reading involved, so you would circle the IR. The next area is for the student or teacher to write in there the I can statement. So what's this rubric focusing on? Now, the next section is very important. We look always at language proficiency with regard to the 4 categories: function, context, text type, and accuracy comprehensibility. So on this rubric, we've separated those out as neatly and clearly as we can, which is really hard when you sit down and look at resources out there, especially those from ACTFL that give you guidance on proficiency levels. It's hard to separate function from content. It's hard to separate text type from function and so on. It's all interweaved. So we did the best we could. And on this single point rubric, this is a novice low sample, so you can see the descriptors of what function might look like at the novice low level if you're meeting it. You can see what content or vocabulary looks like for novice low, text type. So is it singular words, memorized phrases, a sentence? That's text type. What that would look like, how it's described at novice low. And finally the accuracy and comprehensibility gets into that grammar and language the students are using. Are you able to understand that student because of their language? On the right is a column for the teacher to indicate, well, not only did you meet novice low, you've exceeded. Here's some examples of how that was demonstrated. And on the left side is where a teacher can say, you know, with regard to text type, you're not quite there yet. So you're on your way to novice low, and a teacher could write some examples. A second version of rubrics we have are the continuum rubrics. So where the single point are novice low all the way up through advanced mid. The continuum, we have 3 different versions. The version you're seeing is our lowest version, and it goes from novice low to intermediate low. And on this version, a teacher could, again, fill in the category of mode, what mode's being addressed. Maybe this is a presentational speaking activity that's occurring that the teacher wants to give feedback on. There'll be an instructional outcome, something like, I can introduce myself to others. That might be appropriate for novice low, if that's what we're targeting, or novice mid. And then you have the gamut. So maybe there's a student who's really doing great with their Spanish language and they're demonstrating novice high. The continuum rubric allows a teacher to show where the student is on that spectrum. So again, we have 3 different versions of the continuum. This is one component that's used K through 12 to show our students this is where your language is, to show parents, to inform teachers' practice, and so on. The students see these same rubrics K through 12, so they become very familiar with the format. They know it at a glance, and they know what to look for. Another component for our monitoring of our students' language proficiency are good old-fashioned folders. We're looking at going digital, but right now we're folders. They are color-coded. Each year gets a new color. We make a folder for every kid that's kindergarten across the district every year. In this folder, we ask teachers to put at least, at a minimum, 2 rubrics of evidence of the student's language level each year. So by the time a student is graduating, and that's 2 examples per semester, so 4 per year. So by the time a student is graduating, they're going to have a large collection of evidence of this is how your language grew throughout the time, or wow, you plateaued for a while and then all of a sudden we saw language growth, and so on. It's a really good way to monitor. These portfolios get passed from grade level to grade level. So at the beginning of next year, we'll collect all those old portfolios. We'll go in, add any materials we might have, and pass them on. Also located in the portfolios are our score reports. We used Apple for a few years. We're switching to Stamp next year, so we'll continue to place score reports in these portfolios. That means a teacher can go back in time and see how a certain student did in 3rd grade. And that student's currently in 6th grade. They can see how they did in 4th and 5th and see this progression. Another tool that we have affixed inside of the portfolio is a tracking chart. And this tracking chart indicates each mode that's assessed, and a teacher goes in and bubbles. For 3rd grade, this student was at novice high for interpretive listening. For presentational speaking, that student was at novice mid. And for interpretive reading, they were at intermediate low. So we have this chart, almost like a doctor would use, where the teacher connects the dot and we see this trajectory for each student. And we can quickly take a glance and see if they're at benchmark proficiency level, our goal level for that grade level, or not. Now, the next document we call the language continuum. This is brand new. We're super proud. It took about 4 years to develop. The Language Continuum is a document, 121 pages, that articulates the Spanish language we hope every teacher will address and include in his or her curriculum, and the language that every student will have at a minimum level for each grade level. This document is something that's in addition to all the language that they're learning for their core content. Excuse me. So some examples of the language continuum. When you go inside, you're going to see a prelude, an intro, and that intro has our Spanish proficiency targets. So you can see listed on this document, these are our benchmark goals we have for each grade level. So by the time a student leaves us, we're hoping they're in that advanced range with their Spanish language skills. Also in this prelude section, we break down what does the document look like, how do you read it, really basic information a teacher would need to understand the continuum. Then you'll hit grade level by grade level a page that says, okay, we're in the kindergarten section. The document is broken down into those 4 categories of language proficiency. So the first thing in kindergarten the teacher will see is text type. So we have developed this table that shows for interpretive listening for our kindergarten students. Our goal for them at the end of the year is novice mid. For interpersonal speaking listening, it's novice low. For interpretive reading, it's novice low. And for the presentational writing, it's novice low. But what we've done is we've articulated for the teacher, this is exactly a description of what your grade level should be able to do with regard to text type. The next section of the document includes tenses and grammar. So a lot of times this is the thing teachers want to know. They're like, tell me exactly what grammar I need to focus on, what language structures do I need to make sure they know. So we broke that down into 2 categories, tenses and grammar. Now, if you notice, under each of those categories, there's a column that says focus and a column that says breadcrumbs. The focus is what we hope our students will have learned and mastered by the end of that year. Thus, it's a focused tense or a focused grammatical structure. The breadcrumbs is just that. It's the trail. The teacher's going to be giving breadcrumbs. They're going to be using these language structures to get the kids' and students' ears tuned to that grammatical structure. So they're not shocked when that structure is introduced and is a focus in first grade. So the breadcrumbs are that intentional giving hints, prepping the students for next year. It's okay for a teacher to ask a student to produce breadcrumb language as long as there's a large amount of support, whether that be word walls up or on the whiteboard, language phrases, sentence frames that'll help the student be able to do that. Another component, such as in kindergarten, is the function and content. So on this section, you'll run into roughly 6 or so different themes. This one is, what is my classroom? We're not saying this is a unit. We've just collected it together thematically. If you go to the 3rd column, it says content. And in there, we've kind of articulated for teachers, this is the minimal language, the minimum that we want our students to know with regard to classroom as a kindergartner. On the 2nd column are sample ICANNs for the teacher. So remember, they have to have 2 ICANNs up. And the first ICANN is core content. The second one is specifically language. So we've kind of articulated, hey, here's some samples of what might go up on your board if you're focusing on interpretive or interpersonal or presentational. The far right column are sample intercultural communication, and these come from the Necessful ACTFL standards to make sure that cultural, that global citizen is being developed as well. Now, I'm going to show you a sample of 9th grade. We hop to 9th grade. We've got our tenses. So you see the focus is the preterite, and then breadcrumbs. Oh, they're starting to lay some breadcrumbs with conditional, and plus que parfait in French is what we would call it, but we'd have the conditional and present perfect and so on, where the teacher's giving just examples, dropping it in the language they're using or maybe materials they're creating for the students. Here's an example, again, of 9th grade of the grammar. So you can see on the left side, that's the focus of what a teacher needs to pull into their instruction. And on the right side, you're kind of just giving some tidbits, some breadcrumbs of what the students should experience. All of this, again, ties into our rubrics. So with the rubrics, a teacher could take something on the focus side and use that rubric and give feedback to the student. Maybe they just want to give feedback on accuracy and comprehensibility with the present subjunctive, and that's fine. Maybe they want to do it with the text type if they're focusing on content. So take a moment and reflect. What's needed to further your program's articulation K through 12? We're happy to share our documents, talk with you, help you think this through, but keeping that K through 12 mindset in everything you create will create that strongly articulated program. If you'd like any further information, feel free to reach out. Here's my email information along with Deborah Aparicio, who is our immersion facilitator. She works hands-on with our elementary school programs and is a phenomenal resource. Thank you so much.